all, welcome back to Right at the Wire. Well, we've reached part 4 of our Elements of Handicapping series for the Preakness, pace. So we're going to take a look at the contenders and see how they match up regarding the pace of the race. So let's take a look. Part 4 is pace. A look at the pace fractions for each contender in their prior races to evaluate if they can get the distance and factor in the Preakness. In the one hole is National Treasure, right along the rail. He's got blinkers on, we think, for this one. And back in the hands of Bob Baffert, the indication is that he may be up, if not on the lead, he'll certainly be right off of the leaders. You look at his pace numbers, he's had kind of an erratic training schedule, a couple of interruptions, and certainly switching trainers back to Baffert is a little different deal than what Tim Yakteen was doing. But if we look at the sham, I think he needed a race off the Breeders' Cup, and it was that simple. He had an okay third. But the Sanity Derby, he shows a progression, and that he ran a better third fraction, meaning he can carry his speed a little longer. And that's always a good sign. You see a progression. For those of you who don't know, 1FR, 2FR, and 3FR are first, second, and third calls for the pace. For the third fraction, you generally want to see one over 53. It tends to mean that they're going to be able to get the distance and have something left in the tank closing. It's a pretty good indication that National Treasure is going to move forward. I think that'll likely put him over 53 and make him competitive. So I'm not overly concerned about the fact that it's under 53. For our pace parameters, again, the EP is early pace. It's the second pace call. The sustained pace, SP, is basically an indication of how a horse carries their speed throughout. And basically what you do is you take the EP and the third fraction, add them together, divide by 2, and that's your number. Average pace is taking the EP and SP together and dividing them by 2. And that gives you an average pace, or the average speed this horse is carrying throughout the race. The prorated mile and 3/16 time is basically just taking the fractions from their last race and prorating it out to take a look and see what their final time perhaps might look like. Now, you do see a 46-4 and a 111-3, and in this field, that would put National Treasure on the lead comfortably. That may be the strategy here. I'm not overly certain. This horse has been rating for the majority of his career, but the fact that there isn't a lot of pace and that he's got the rail, that might be a strategy they try. Regardless, I think his mile and 3/16 time makes him competitive in this race. Generally, a time between 155 and like 157 would be considered competitive, or roughly a par. Anything below 155 would be an outstanding time. So I think he's right. He's square in the mix. He's definitely a competitor here. And I think, in fact, he could be a win candidate. I'm expecting him to move forward. So he gets a B mainly because of his, the prior two efforts didn't necessarily follow a pattern per se because of the interruptions and whatnot. But he can run with these guys. I have no doubt about that. Chase the Chaos, number 2. That California Derby was on synthetic, so those pace numbers are represented by that, the asterisk, to tell you it's on synthetic. But for comparison, I put the San Felipe on there as well. And you see his dirt form really isn't going to cut it. Any third fraction below 50 indicates the horse is going to have a lot of problems keeping up. I'm fully expecting this Chase the Chaos to be backing up in the stretch. I don't expect him to factor. And you see that projected time, 48, 112, and 158, almost 159. That'll put him well back, and I don't expect this one to compete. Mage, Kentucky Derby winner. He gets an A for obvious reasons. If you look at his progression, it's really exactly what you want to see. Every race, he's running a better third fraction, so he's carrying his speed farther as the distances increase. That's exactly what you want to see. Now, the only question we have is if he does break poorly again, he may have to do a little too much late. And the fact that there may not be a lot of pace in this race may be a problem for him. But he's coming into the race in top form. That's exactly the pace progression you want to see. His average and sustained pace are leading this group, and Generally, if a horse that has the top AP and SP wins the race. So good indication. You see the prorated mile 3/16 time. The 48 and 111 would keep him probably towards the rear, mid-pack towards the rear, not all the way back, but 154 and 1 projected mile 3/16 time is outstanding. And if he runs back to that, this race is over. So he's a definite contender and an absolute win candidate. Coffee with Chris, I don't expect a factor other than being on the engine early. I think they're going to send this one. I don't see why they wouldn't. And what other choice do they have, really? His pace numbers don't match up. If you look at the Tessio, he was up near the lead and then just fell right back. Any third fraction below 50 is subpar and indicates this horse isn't going to stay with this group. You look at the mile and 3/16 projected time, he's at 159. That'll have him way back. He's a toss. Red Route 1 is pretty interesting, actually. We know how he's been running this year. And if you look at the Rebel and Arkansas Derby, you see something kind of interesting. He's that 52 and change for each of those would always have him at the rear. That's a very slow number. But look at that second fraction. He was making a big middle move, gathering steam towards the end of the back stretch around the turn and into the stretch. And his third fraction, excuse me, was normally a closer would have a closing fraction of over 53 comfortably. But you see here, he doesn't. And I think that's kind of interesting that he was making more of a middle move than a big late move. Now, the progression is there. You see, from the Rebel to the Arkansas to the Bathhouse Row, his third fraction is getting better, and his second fraction is reducing. His first fraction is increasing. So he's carrying his speed better, and he's more engaged in the race. While not being up near the leaders, he's closer to the pace. And that's going to give him, that coupled with the progression we see here, puts him in the race a lot better. And so from that perspective, he's looking pretty good coming in here. That's exactly the progression we want to see. Now, if you project out his mile and 3/16 time, 49, 113 would keep him towards the rear. And then 157 is a pretty competitive time. It doesn't win this race, but it probably keeps him in the exotics. And if he does take another move forward, which is rather possible, I think, then you can consider him a solid exotics candidate. I don't see him as a win candidate, but I think he's definitely going to be in the mix. He's been running with the contenders in all the Derby preps this year, so he gets a B+, and I'll expect a good race out of him. Perform is one of our X Factor horses. Shug McGahee agreed to a $150,000 supplement to get this horse in. And part of that ownership group, well, you don't see it here, apologies, is Phipps Stable. And that's a pretty conservative outfit. So I'd have to believe that he's confident this one's going to move forward in this race. If you look at the pace fractions from the Tessio, you see how he did it. He was back towards the rear and started to build some steam. And the best thing is he maintained his speed from the second and third fraction. And 53.23 is a really solid third fraction, and he got up in time. Now, I'm not so sure that is that's that kind of pace without the second or the third fraction increasing is going to put him in the mix here. You look at that projected mile at 3/16 time, that's going to have him totally dead last at the back. Those are very slow fractions, 50 and 115. That is really going to put him at a major disadvantage. And even if he closes decently and better than he did in the Tessio, his projected time is 158.38. Well, he can improve on that for sure, but I doubt that's going to make him a win candidate here. He gets a B- because I think he's on the. I feel confident that he's going to run a better race. I think he's finally got himself together. I just don't think he's fast enough. That's the bottom line. So he gets a B-. I mean, I think he'll end up on it's potentially, he can be on the bottom of the exotics, but I think that's the extent of it, though. But he is coming to the race, and I think he'll move forward pretty well. Blazing Sevens is another one that's had a rather erratic training pattern. That Fountain Youth was a paid workout, so didn't do any running in there. No bother putting it on here. It doesn't tell us anything. But the bluegrass, I think, is explanatory of this one style. You see 53 and 88, that kind of keeps him towards the rear, and he makes a middle move in the second fraction. And then the best part, for those of you who are fans of Blazing Sevens, the best thing is look at that last fraction, 53-47. So usually when you make a big middle move, the third fraction is slower. And this one is, but it's not appreciably slower. And that means he's carrying his pace pretty well. He's carrying his speed. Now, the only thing to worry about is that he tends to regress. He did it too after running a big effort. But if he stays about where he is right now, I think that puts him on the bottom of the exotics. You look at his projected mile in the 3:16 time; it's pretty competitive, and I think I think he could definitely be in the mix. I don't see any doubt about that. He gets a B mainly because of only one race to really judge him by, but I think he's competitive here. I'm not so sure he's a win candidate. But I think, you got to trust Chad Brown. He's had some pretty good success in the Preakness. So I think this one has just on the pace numbers, it's a pretty good chance to be competitive. First Mission is the one we're all excited about. We all remember that Lexington where he put away Arabian Lion, I should say, and took it down. There's a couple of things that are a little concerning. You see the first and second fraction there. 54 and 54. Well, that means that the pace was kind of soft, and he was up near it. So, he did get a 53 1-2 for finishing, but he also didn't have to run a whole lot in the first couple of fractions. Now, is that going to be the case in this race? That's really the big question. I tend to believe the pace is going to be a little faster than what he's used to. 48 and 112, I don't think he's going to get that. Coffee with Chris, I think they're going to send him, and I think National Treasure has some interest on being up on the lead, and that should automatically make the pace faster. So then the question is he going to take a move forward? And if so, will he have enough steam left to be competitive in this race? Every indication is that he's going to be competitive. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But there's just a little lingering thing. Is he going to be okay if they step things up on the front end for a couple of fractions? That's something you got to wonder about. Pace grade is a B plus because I think he's definitely demonstrated that he will be a factor in this race, and I think he can run with this group. Perhaps the Lexington was the ideal situation for his running style. Maybe he doesn't absolutely have to have that to be competitive here. The other thing is that his speed pattern indicates that he might regress a little bit off the Lexington. And that, now, granted, we're talking about speed there, and this is about pace. But it's just something, they are part and parcel, so you have to think about that. His projected mile in 3/16 time puts him right in the mix here, no problem. And so I think he's definitely a contender in here, not sure about a win candidate. So if we look at our pace parameters and we have them all lined up together, you see in bold, Mage's AP and SP. He leads in both categories. That would make him a rock-solid win candidate. You see Blazing Sevens is in second, which is a little bit of a surprise. But for those of you who are big fans of his, I would be pretty excited about that. I think pace-wise, he's going to be a competitor here. Then we have from there, we would have Red Route 1 and First Mission would be the next couple. So, we think this is going to be a top-heavy race for sure. National Treasure, I firmly believe he's going to have better numbers than that because I think he's going to make a move forward. But you see, there's a big drop-off once you get to Chase the Chaos and Coffee with Chris. So those top six there are all going to be running at roughly the same pace. Prorated mile of 3/16 time, you see Mage is clearly the best, with National Treasure being in second and First Mission in third. And those are logically the top three horses in this race. I think we'd all agree on that. But you do have it's going to require some progression from the others. But I think Perform and Red Route 1 Blazing Sevens are all potential candidates, particularly Red Route 1, I think is really poised to have a nice effort. I have a little bit of doubt about Perform and Blazing Sevens, but that's from the speed standpoint. So that gives you a little idea of what how the pace situation shakes out, and I don't think there's a whole lot of too many surprises. So I think it's pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward. I thought the pace analysis, I don't think it revealed a whole lot of surprises to us. I think it did show us that Red Route 1 and National Treasure in particular, I think, are poised to run a big race. And I think Mage and First Mission will certainly be there as well. Blazing Sevens and Perform, not quite as certain about, but they are in good hands, and it's highly possible that they'll run a good race. Whether it's good enough, that'll be the question. We will put all this together, form, class, and speed and pace, in our final assessment, and that'll be coming in the near future, where we make some final conclusions about our contenders and maybe a strategy on how we move forward towards the Preakness. We're also going to continue with our Belmont card series, so every day they have races, we'll have a sequence, so you have that to look forward to as well. If you do like what you see here, of course, please like and subscribe, and we do thank you for coming by. And those new members who joined, welcome and thank you. I love the way this community is growing. It's a really great thing, and love the feedback I get from you guys, so keep that coming as well. I'll be talking to you a few more times this week, so be on the lookout for that. And until then,